And we are ready to begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Torn Book Club. I am your host, Saruman, aka Josh. And today is August 30th, 2015, and some people are talking about the epic music that was playing before we started, which if you're watching this on YouTube, you will not be hearing for copyright purposes. Yeah, it's some epic trailer music to begin what is the final battle between the Valar and Morgoth. For those of you tuning in for the first time, we have been discussing for the last few months the Silmarillion. And today we are focusing on one chapter, one page-wise very short chapter, but content-wise a very impressive and important chapter. It is the final chapter of the section called the Quenta Silmarillion. And this chapter is called Of the Voyage of Eärendil and the War of Wrath. This is the climactic final battle. This is where everything finally comes to a conclusion for this part of the story. This is not the end of the book itself. We still have a few more chapters to go. So, without further ado, let's get into let's get into it. Temple is saying, I blame our Silmarillion discussions for me having weird elf dreams. Don't put that on me. Don't put that on me, Temple. That's all you. So here we go. Let us begin. Go to the big board. Let me just adjust this guy a little bit. There we go. All right. Where is the thingy? Okay. So we're going to do a little quick recap of what happened last week, because last week was also a very big chapter in the story. We saw the ruin of Doriath and the fall of Gondolin. So these were the last two elfin kingdoms that were still up and running in Middle-earth. And they were both brought to complete destruction, one through very insidious and subtle means, and the other through straight-up assault. So Doriath was taken out by subtle manipulations that eventually ended in its complete destruction, and Gondolin was destroyed by somebody, Maeglin, betraying them, and then Morgoth coming in with his huge army and bringing the entire thing to ruin. And the survivors of both of these kingdoms ended up in this area here called the Havens of Sirion, which is at the mouth of the great river Sirion, which is the main tributary of this part of Middle-earth, Beleriand. What is Temple saying here? This one was weird. Two hells were getting married, and we were all trying to escape some dragony monster thing while we were making the preparations. That sounds like something straight out of Silmarillion, Temple. So I see we have a couple new people in the chat, The Last Ring and the Yellow Flash of the Leaf. So welcome. So everybody who is left has now fled to the Havens of Sirion, and they've begun building a new life for themselves, while Morgoth and orcs and all sorts of terrible things overrun the rest of the world. And among them, their leader is the son of, let's see if I can get this right, of Tuor and Idril, who were from Gondolin, and his name is Eärendil, who I'm sure many of you probably know or have heard of at some point, just from either reading or watching Lord of the Rings. You've probably heard of the Light of Eärendil, which Galadriel gives to Frodo. That is absolutely in relation to this guy, and we'll get into how later on. Uh, so, um, so Eärendil is pretty much the leader of these refugees, and they've built a good life for themselves. They're in constant contact with the mariners of the island of Valar, which is led by Círdan the shipwright. And Eärendil has a very specific kind of obsession. His parents, Tuor and Idril, when they reached a certain age, they got on a ship and just sailed out and never came back. Um, and Eärendil has two kinds of obsessions. One is to find his parents, and the other is to get the message of need to Valinor. Because that was Tuor's job. His job was to help was to get Gondolin to get the elves out of Gondolin before Morgoth attacked. That didn't happen. His other job was to get a message to the Valar, basically begging for their help in fighting Morgoth. And that task has passed to Eärendil. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about elf poop? Oh God, yes. Last week was kind of ridiculous with the elves and plumbing situation. Not gonna get into that again. You all talk about that however you want. I'm gonna press on with the story. Uh, Eärendil um, had a ship commissioned for him, and it's a beautiful ship called Vingalot, which I believe means foam flower. I have to look that up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a foam flower. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But his ship's name is Vingalot, and he goes out on many journeys to try to find his parents and to try to find Valinor. And he always comes back empty-handed. And whenever he does that, he leaves his wife behind, and his wife is Elwing. And Elwing is the daughter of Dior. I think, yes, yes, who escaped from Doriath, and she is in possession of one of the Silmarils. This is the same Silmaril that was cut off of Morgoth's crown by Beren so long ago, and has changed hands since then, since the fall of Doriath, and now it's in her hands. And her family considers the Silmaril at this point to be their family's birthright. And we have but there is a certain there what is the word? There's a certain obsession that comes with the Silmaril, primarily in the form of the Sons of Fëanor, the elf who created the Silmarils. Since this is the only Silmaril that is not in possession of Morgoth, the Sons of Fëanor, led by the eldest son, Maethros, they have an oath that they have to fulfill, which is get the Silmaril back by any means necessary. Now, at this point, they've caused so much damage in this quest. They've committed two kinslayings. The first one was in Valinor, when they slaughtered the Teleri elves in order to get ships in order to go after Morgoth. And the second was in Doriath when they came and killed Dior and a whole bunch of other people to try to get the Silmaril from him. Elwing took the Silmaril and fled. And in that last battle, 3 of the 7 sons of Fëanor were killed. So now all that's left are Maethros, Maglor, Amrod, and Amras. And at this point, they know where the Silmaril is. They know who has it. But they're really reluctant to go after it again just because the 2 elves who are pretty much the leaders of the Sons of Fëanor are Maethros and Maglor. And they're both really heartsick over this whole thing. They don't want to go after the Silmaril and cause more destruction, but they also know that they're bound by an oath that is very powerful to do so. So essentially they just put it off and put it off and put it off until they possibly can't put it off any further, when the pull to get the Silmaril is just so overwhelming. And this finally happens at a point where come on, mouse, work, where Eärendil is off on another journey. And while he's away, he begins getting strange dreams that Elwing might be in danger. So he turns around, but there are storms in his way, and there's a lot of obstacles in his way to get him back. And so in that time, Maethros, Maglor, Amrod, and Amras attack the havens of Sirion and commit the 3rd kinslaying. And it's another brutal battle, and this time they're really going after the Silmaril, but it eludes them again when Elwing dives off of a cliff and into the sea with the Silmaril around her neck, because it's in a giant necklace. And so again, the Maethros, Maglor, and everybody are unable to get the Silmaril. And this time, 2 more sons of Fëanor are killed, Amrod and Amras. So now the only 2 left are Maethros and Maglor. And both of them hate that they have to do this. They hate that they're bound by this oath to kill and cause destruction and chaos until they get the Silmarils. But again, it slips from them. And so, in a little bit of trying to make up for this, or a little bit of repentance for this, Maglor takes Eärendil and Elwing's 2 sons, Elros and Elrond. Yes, that Elrond. And he raises them as his own, and he treats them very well, and he loves them as his own 2 sons. But they're still prisoners. Meanwhile, Elwing is captured by Ulmo, the god of the sea, or the lord of the sea, I should say. They're not really gods. And he takes her and transforms her into a swan and launches her at Vingilot, and she's carrying the Silmaril, and Eärendil sees this bright light come charging right at his ship. And when it arrives, he sees this swan that is just completely beaten to hell. It's tired, it's close to death, but he sees that it's holding the Silmaril, or he sees that it's glowing, and so he nurses it back to health, and then the next morning it has transformed into Elwing, his wife. And she has the Silmaril. And so, with the Silmaril in their possession, uh, Eärendil, uh, Elwing tells him everything about her. Tells him everything about Maethros and Maglor coming and killing people in the Havens. And at this point, Eärendil forsakes Middle Earth and he says, "Screw it, I'm done." And he's like, "I'm just gonna go to Valinor. I'm going to complete this task, and then I'm never going back to Middle Earth ever again." Eärendil saying, "When you say he launched her at the ship, it makes me picture him putting her in a slingshot and launching her that way." Yeah, launching is probably not the best term for it, but it's the best I could come up with because uh, basically um, she's sent to a Vingilot in the form of a swan. Um, I would say almost like she has no control over it. She's just pointed in that direction and let loose. Um, but anyway, so with the Silmaril sort of guiding the way, Eärendil is able to make it through the enchanted islands and the shadowy seas that are all the safeguards around Valinor that keep people away. He's able to get through all of it and get to Valinor like that. And so they arrive at the shores of Valinor, and Eärendil has no idea what to expect. He's very fearful of the possibility that the Valar could see him and just immediately put him to death. And so he tells Elwing and he tells his crew, "Stay on the ship, don't come on to land with me. We'll probably never see each other again, but this is my burden, not yours." And Elwing will have none of that, and she goes in after him and goes to the shores of Valinor with him. And so when they reach the shores of Valinor, when they actually set foot on it, Eärendil tells Elwing, "You have to stay here. The task of getting this message to the Valar is mine alone." I believe he says something to that effect. He says, "Await here, for only one may bring the message that is I can't read. Await me here, for only one may bring the message that it is my fate to bear." And he went up alone into the land and came into the Calakiria, and it seemed to him empty and silent. Now here's a what happens to Eärendil once he gets into Valinor. He goes into the elf city of Tirion, and it is completely empty. And he's very scared by this. He thinks that maybe something has happened in Valinor, and now all hope is truly lost. Like Morgoth, at some point assaulted Valinor, and it was already too late. But what's actually happening is there's a festival happening, and all the elves in Tirion have gone on to the city of Valimar, where the Valar live. And so the city of Tirion is completely empty except for a couple scouts who see him and send word to the Valar that one of the most amazing and impossible things in the world has happened. Somebody has sailed to Valinor. And so one of the Valar, I think he's a Valar, he might be a Maiar, Eonwe, who is the herald of Manwe, the king of the Valar. He goes and he greets Eärendil in this incredibly florid speech. Let Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is. It's actually kind of hilarious, just like how over the top this greeting speech is. He goes, "Hail, Eärendil, of mariners most renowned, the looked for that cometh at unawares, the longed for that cometh beyond hope. Hail, Eärendil, bringer of light before the sun and moon, splendor of the children of earth, star in the darkness, jewel in the sunset, radiant in the morning." Like, I read that and I was like, oh my god, they're just completely fawning over him. So Eonwë takes Eärendil and brings him before all of the Valar. Even Ulmo joins in, and Eärendil makes his case, and he pleads for both for help for both men and elves, since he's actually akin to both. Um, his his father. His father, Tuor, is descended from men, and his mother, Elwing, is descended from elves. And so he really is like, and not only that, but he also is he also represents the Maiar, because his one of his ancestors is Melian, the Maiar, who was the wife of King Thingol. So he actually represents three races. And so they have the Valar have a long discussion about this. Mandos is kind of oh, sorry, Aravandi's right. Idril is his mother. Elwing is his wife. Sorry. Yes, Elwing is his wife. Idril is his mother, who is an elf. Yes. It's like, that doesn't seem right. Yeah. Okay. I get all these names confused. I'm sorry. So the Valar have this back and forth. So Mandos says, "Shall mortal man step living upon the undying lands and yet live?" And Ulmo retorts with, "For this he was born into the world. And say unto me whether he is Eärendil, Tuor's son of the line of Hador, or the son of Idril, Turgon's daughter of the elven house of Finwë." And Mandos says back to him, "Well, if he's part of the race of men, then he's not allowed in Valinor. And if he's of the Noldor, he's also not allowed in Valinor because of the ban." And this is when Manwë finally steps in and says that okay, thank you, Temple. She's saying, "If you didn't get the names confused, I'd be surprised. It's not easy to keep track of." Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's very difficult to keep track of all these names. So Manwë, he determines that Eärendil is here because of his love for his people, and so he doesn't feel that it's right to put him to death for that. So he offers Eärendil a choice. He says, "You can be bound to men or to elves. You have to choose one of the two." Much like the choice that Luthien was given when she went to the Undying Lands, and she was given the choice of staying there as an elf or returning to Middle Earth as a human. And in this, Eärendil has the same choice, but he doesn't want to make the choice. And they've extended this choice also to his wife, Elwing, and also even further to their sons, Elrond and Elros. But they make their choice later on. But for now, it's between Eärendil and Elwing. And Eärendil doesn't want to make a choice. He's weary of the world. He doesn't want to deal with this anymore. And so Elwing makes the choice. She wants to be bound to the fate of the elves. and so Eärendil chooses the same as her. And so they become elves, but because of this journey, because of this truly unique circumstance, they're told they have to stay in Valinor. They're not allowed to go back. They're not allowed to set foot on Middle Earth again. And they both agree to that. Where is it? Elwing is given a tower in Valinor, and Eärendil, who is now the keeper of the Silmaril, it is reforged into a crown for him, and he becomes. And they also take his ship. They send his crew back, and they transform Vingulot into a giant flying ship, and Eärendil stands at the bow with the Silmaril on his brow, and he rises up into the night sky as a giant star. And everybody sees this, and they believe that this is a sign that the Valar are finally going to join the fight. And even Maethros and Maglor see this and say, well, this must mean that the Silmaril has made it to Valinor, so we don't need to worry about it anymore. Or at least Maglor is saying that. Maethros is less sure of that. And we'll get into their discussion about that later. And so he becomes this giant star and this herald of the Valar finally coming to join the fight, because the other decision that the Valar make is that they will go to Middle Earth and they will remove Morgoth once and for all. The time has finally come. And so the Valar gather together with all the Maiar, and they form the host of the Valar, which is not just them, not just the Valar and the Maiar, it's also there were also elves. All of the Vanyar elves who stayed behind in Valinor, they joined the host. All of the Noldor who stayed behind. Finarfin, who is Fëanor and Fingolfin's brother. They join up. They join up with the host, and they all go to and they all begin the journey east to make their big final assault on Angband. And Aravandi's saying something like, the book says Elwing got to keep her wings, and she'd fly out to meet Eärendil when he got back from his sailing in the sky. Yes, that is true, and I forgot to mention that. She would wait for him in her tower, and when he would go off on patrol, when he would come back, she would fly up to meet him whenever he would come into port, and it's a beautiful story. So anyway, the host of the Valar leaves Valinor, and they begin their march, and they're sailing across the sea, and they begin their huge assault. And this battle goes by two names. One is the Great Battle, which is kind of understating it. The other name really kind of describes the epicness a little bit more, which is the War of Wrath. So Morgoth sends out everything he's got. He sends out demons and Balrogs and everything to take out the Valar. And of course, the Valar, they're able to beat all of this back, and they're able to beat back all of the armies, and they're making this great progress. Suzanne and Aravandi are discussing Elwing and why she would stay behind and not go with Eärendil, and yeah, it's because she didn't enjoy it very much. And she had faith that he would always come back to her. So there you go. But Morgoth is seeing all of this. He knows that basically his end is coming. The Valar are overpowering all of his armies, and so he unleashes his final secret weapon, which is an army of dragons. He's been building up this huge army of dragons that he finally unleashes on the elves and on the Valar and on the Maiar, and it's this huge aerial assault. And that's when, and this is where you hear like the swooping heroic music, Eärendil comes in with Vingilot, leading an army of eagles to take on the dragons. And it's this huge aerial battle. And that's and then we have a, I'm sorry, go down here. We have a one final turning point in the battle, and that's with the unleashing of the largest of all of the dragons, and Calagon the Black. He is the largest and most powerful of all of the dragons. And Eärendil takes him on one-on-one, and he's able to defeat Calagon and throw him down to the ground, and he destroys Thangorodrim, which are the three huge mountains that make up the gateway to Angband. And so from there, the Valar come in and they just tear up the entire land. They tear up all of the mountains to unveil all of the mines underneath. And they kill and imprison all of the orcs. They release all of the imprisoned elves. And Morgoth, he retreats. He goes... Where is... Oh, I forgot to show you this cool thing. Where is it? Yeah. Nice battle between Eärendil and Calagon. And so Morgoth has retreated into the deepest mines of Angband, but the Valar find him and they chain him up again. And this time they chain him up and they take him back to Valinor, and they also cut out the two Silmarils from his crown. Did I say kill? No, they don't kill him. They've taken him. So they've imprisoned or they've chained up Morgoth, and they're taking him back to Valinor because once he's cornered, he tries to play the he tries to play the good guy again, like, I'm sorry, and he's begging for forgiveness like he did last time, and they're like, we're not buying it this time. You're coming with us. But before we get into Morgoth's final fate, there is the matter of the two remaining Silmarils, which are being kept in a camp overseen by Eönwë. And Maglor and Maethros still have this oath that they have to deal with. And now there's only two Sons of Fëanor left, and there's two Silmarils left, because the one that Eärendil has is his alone, and it's been given to him by the Valar at this point. So it's his birthright, it's his alone. So Maethros and Maglor... Suzanne, you're getting ahead of yourself. Wait. Because we're going to get into what happens with Morgoth in a little bit. So but we have to deal with the end of Maglor and Maethros, which is really kind of tragic because they're bound by this oath, and but also the Silmarils are now in the possession of the Valar. So they have this discussion where they try to logic out what they should do. Uh, and let me see where it is. Yeah. So so yeah, they have this discussion um, about what's going to happen with them and the Silmarils, and the option is there to assault the camp and take the Silmarils by force, because they know that once the Silmarils get back to Valinor, they're never getting their hands on them again. And then there's the whole point of if it gets to Valinor and they're completely unable to fulfill their oath at that point, then they fall into darkness. But or either fall into darkness or they have to uh, commit open war against the Valar, uh, and basically be Morgoth all over again. And so it's really sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And also, if they take them now, they're also damned. Um, but then Maglor tries to make the point of if the Valar um, take the Silmarils, doesn't that make the oath void? Because they were the ones who were named as witnesses to the oath. And Maethros says they were the witnesses, but the oath was sworn by Iluvatar, and only he's the one who can really say the oath is no more. And he's not going to interfere. He's never going to say anything about it. So they're really stuck in this very difficult position where they have to get the Silmarils or die in the process. And so finally, after a lot of discussion, they finally agree to assault the camp and take the Silmarils by force. And so they take the Silmarils. They're completely surrounded. They're certain they're gonna die. They're certain they're gonna get killed by doing this. But Eärendil tells them to let them go, let them take the Silmarils, and that's when the tragic part of this happens. And the first is with Maethros, because these two have committed 3 kinslayings. They've committed horrible sins, all in the name of this oath that was sworn by their father. And the Silmarils do tend to uh, the Silmarils tend to burn the hands of people who are not have committed great sins, or they it burned the hand of Morgoth, and so they also begin to burn the hands of both Maethros and Maglor, and they slowly begin to drive the two of them insane. And Maethros gives into the insanity of it, and he finds an open fiery chasm and throws himself and the Silmaril into it. And that's the end of Maethros. And so the Silmaril goes down into, I believe Tolkien calls it the bosom of the earth. And then with Maglor, he hangs on to it for as long as he can, but it's burning him and it's driving him crazy too. And so finally, when he can't take it anymore, he throws it into the sea and forsakes the oath and resigns himself to whatever fate leaves him by forsaking the oath, and basically wanders the beaches up and down, singing the songs of their history and never returning to Valinor. And that's what happens to the Sons of Fëanor. Maglor is the only one left, and he's pretty much reduced to a wandering vagabond. I Stole the One Ring is saying, I'm not going to have any tears left after this book is over. It's quite true. So, now we go back to what exactly are the Valar going to do with Morgoth? Well, at this point, it took a while, but the Valar have learned their lesson. And they're not going to send him back to prison and hope he'll change his ways yet again. No, this time they banish him. They send him out through the Gates of Night, which is the gateway between Ea and the timeless void out beyond. They cast him out through there, never to return. And so Morgoth is completely banished from Middle-earth. He's banished from the universe. He's out in the timeless void. And Eärendil is given the task of setting a watch to the Gates of Night to make sure that Morgoth never comes back in. So he's pretty much the watchman that keeps Morgoth out of Middle-earth. And so that becomes his job, and that's why he is known as the elves' most beloved star. And so the light of Eärendil is actually the light of the Silmaril that he wears. So when you think about it, the light of Eärendil that Frodo is using in The Lord of the Rings is the last light of the Silmarils on Middle-earth. So let that sink into your brain for a little bit. So now we have what happens to Eärendil and Elwing's two sons, Elros and Elrond. They're both given the choice to bind themselves to men or elves, and in this instance, Elrond chooses to bind himself to elves. Now they're both still called the half-elven, even though they bind themselves to a very specific race and become part of that race. They're still known as the half-elven, because while Elrond binds himself to the elves, Elros binds himself to men, and he's also granted very long life, and he will become the first king of Númenor, which is a new kingdom which hasn't come up yet, but we will be discussing that next week. And so this is it. This is what ends the Quenta Silmarillion. So let me just read part of the last paragraph here. But Morgoth himself, the Valar, thrust through the door of night beyond the walls of the world into the timeless void, and a guard is set forever upon those walls, and Eärendil keeps watch upon the ramparts of the sky. Yet the lies that Melkor, the mighty and accursed, Morgoth Bauglier, the power of terror and of hate, sowed in the hearts of men and elves are a seed that does not die and cannot be destroyed. And ever and anon it sprouts anew, and will bear dark fruit even unto the latest days. And so that's it. That's the story of the Silmarillion, but it's not the end of the book, the Silmarillion. We still have 3 more episodes The next two are going to focus on the next section, which is called Akalabeth, or the downfall of Numenor. And we're going to take that in 2 episodes because it's a really big story. And Elros, the son of Eärendil, the brother of Elrond, is going to be the first king of Numenor. And there's still a certain guy who has eluded capture this whole time. Even after the War of Wrath, even after the capture and banishment of Morgoth, he's still out there in Middle-earth and he's still biding his time, and his name is Sauron. And he's going to do some things. He's going to try to rekindle the dark light that Morgoth created. And Eärendil saying, "Oh, it's over already." Yeah, like I said, it's not a very long chapter. It's a very impactful chapter. And Tolkien even says in the chapter, he says, of the march of the host of the Valar to the north of Middle-earth, little is said in any tale, for among them went none of the elves who had dwelt and suffered in the hitherlands, and who made the histories of those days that are still known. So, kind of like the fall of Gondolin last week, it's a huge battle, but it's very sparse on details, aside from just a couple little bits here and there. Whether or not that's expanded upon in the history of Middle-earth, I don't know. It could be. I hope it is. Because I haven't read too much of that. And I stole the one where he's saying, this Sauron sounds like trouble. Yeah, he's not a good guy. This Sauron guy, he's got some issues. I wouldn't trust him. Yeah, don't trust the Sauron guy. But we'll get into some of that next week. So yeah, we've only got 3 episodes left. We've got 2 episodes on the rise and the fall of Numenor, and then after that is the very last chapter of the Silmarillion, which is the creation of the Rings of Power and the Third Age of Middle-earth. And this chapter, I like to call the last chapter of the Silmarillion I sort of call the last chapter of the Silmarillion the shortest summary of the Lord of the Rings you're ever going to read. But we'll get into that at the end of the month. Now we're gonna have an episode next week on Numenor, and then another episode the week after that to finish the story of Numenor. Then we're going to be off that following week because that's the Baggins birthday picnic. And then after that, we're going to have our final episode on the Third Age. Now, at the Baggins birthday picnic, we're going to have a discussion there, which we're going to record and then play on the show on the 27th. That doesn't mean we're not going to have a discussion on the 27th for all of you to join in with as well. But I wanted to do something special for the final Silmarillion episode, and this seemed like the best thing that we could cobble together. So yeah. So what did we think of this huge epic tale? Because this is the most epic story that Tolkien wrote. Way more epic than Lord of the Rings. Definitely more epic than The Hobbit. Because this covers about a couple thousand years of history, and has so many huge battles and so many great characters that come and go in this story. It's almost like, I would say it's more like a Game of Thrones type of scenario than like than Lord of the Rings, which is a specific quest. Now, while there is a specific quest and a specific oath in the Silmarillion, there's so many other things that happen around it and because of it that it becomes this huge, encompassing, epic story. Um, like, you have, like, I would love to know in the chat who your favorite characters are. Some of mine, I love Thingol, because he's one of the oldest elves. He's also somewhat unpredictable. Like, you almost get a stronger sense of him as a character than just about anybody else, just because you spend so much time with him throughout this story, because he's there in the beginning, he's there almost all the way up to the end, he's playing a part in almost everything that happens. And there's this great there you see like this very strong arc with him, even to the point where like his heart is softened because of what happens with Baron, and and you see his guilt, and then his downfall into madness when he gets the Silmaril. Suzanne is saying Galadriel, and Galadriel too is a terrific character. I believe there's more of her in Unfinished Tales than in the Silmarillion. We get like insights into her throughout, and we sort of see like her building over time. Um, um, but yeah, like I'm curious to read more about her in the Unfinished Tales. Eärendil just like let a just gave us a huge list. Let me see if I can go through all of them. Let's see: Thingol, Galadriel, Beleg, Eärendil, Elwing, Finrod, Maethros, and many, many more. And Eärendil's also saying Beren and Luthien and Melian. And yeah, those are like I could talk for hours about every one of those characters. I love the relationship between Thingol and Melian. I love the relationship between Beren and Luthien. Just because this is a story that you could sort of see becoming like Suzanne is saying, "Gotta go. See you at the picnic. Bye, Suzanne. See you at the picnic." Um, yeah, well, what was I saying? Beren and Luthien. They have a great relationship where you can sort of feel like the way it starts out, like this is going to be Luthien is going to be the damsel in distress, and Beren is going to be the hero. But Tolkien surprisingly switches that around, and it's Beren who gets captured and imprisoned, and it's Luthien who has to come to his rescue. And even when it comes to fulfilling the quest, Beren wouldn't be able to do it without Luthien. Um, so this is it for when it was written. It's a very progressive story about at least as far as how women are portrayed, and I see that a lot in the Silmarillion. Women are portrayed in a very progressive light. We have the lady Haleth, who leads her people through horrible broken lands to finally settle somewhere, and she's refusing the help of the elves and anybody else who could help her out. And she's this great warrior. We have Idril, who takes the initiative to build a secret exit out of Gondolin in anticipation of an attack, like with more foresight than Turgon or Tuor or anybody else had. It's a There's so many great characters. There's so many great stories in this, and there's such tragedy too. Like, I think I Stole the One Ring was saying earlier, like I'm probably not going to have tears left after this, because it really is like just about everybody dies in this. There is a tragic death in almost every chapter in this book, and and in many cases they're characters who we've come to know and we've come to enjoy. Fingolfin springs to mind. Finrod springs to mind. Um, and so yeah, it's like, but then it all comes together in this incredibly satisfying climax with the War of Wrath. Um, and I feel like this, while I love the Lord of the Rings, like it's one of my favorites. It's one of my first literary loves, and it always will be. I love The Hobbit, and I love the Lord of the Rings, but there is something about the Silmarillion that is so much deeper and so much larger than either of those books. And you can tell that this was something that Tolkien put his heart and soul into over decades. This was, while I'm not saying that The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings aren't a labor of love, um, the Silmarillion, you can tell, is very much a labor of love. Uh, and and it's interesting also knowing like all of the different aspects of this story, because the Silmarillion is the Elvish history that Tolkien really wanted to write. The Hobbit was a children's story that he put together. Um, yeah. Okay. Eärendil's making an interesting point. I was just glad Eärendil and Elwing got to keep being alive in Valinor. If there were any other characters, Eärendil probably would have shot Elwing down from the sky when she looked like a bird. Um, and I always felt like that little bit was sort of a nod to, and I can't remember the name of the poem. Like I want to say it's like a Mariner's Tale or something like that, but it's the story of the albatross. Um, and the way the poem goes is the albatross is flying around the ship, and it's keeping everything at bay. Like they're having a great trip until some idiot on the ship decides he's going to shoot it down, and so he kills the albatross. And when that happens, all hell breaks loose on this ship. And so I sort of saw this as kind of like, sort of maybe a little bit of a nod to that poem. Like, what if they had just not killed the albatross and kept it as a good luck charm? And you see what happens. He keeps the swan. The swan becomes his wife. Eravandi saying the rhyme of the ancient mariner. Thank you. That's it. Uh, uh, he keeps the swan. The swan becomes his wife. His wife has the Silmaril. The Silmaril guides them to Valinor, and they're able to complete their quest. So like that. This is what happens when you don't kill a bird flying around your ship. Uh, so um, so yeah. I there isn't too much more I can think to say about Eravandi saying creepy life and death and life went and rolled a dice to see who got their way with the mariner, and it was depressing. Yeah, it's been a while since I last read that one, so I don't remember too much of it. But yeah, it was really tragic and depressing. But yeah, so I mean, I don't want to talk too long about or go on to too many different rants about the Silmarillion, but I sort of feel like one thing I do want to talk about real quick though is like how The Hobbit was when Tolkien first wrote it was a standalone story. It was about this Hobbit, and it didn't really play into the wider world of this Middle Earth that Tolkien was creating. And it was only after The Hobbit became a success and and the publishers wanted a sequel, that he began writing the Lord of the Rings. And even when he started with Lord of the Rings, it was still not tied to this. It was still its own. It was still more tied to The Hobbit. And as he wrote it and he started expanding on it more, like little bits from this Elvish history started creeping into it, until he finally realized, like, this is part of this story. And so he began rewriting the Lord of the Rings and rewriting The Hobbit, rewriting parts of The Hobbit, and rewriting parts of the Silmarillion, so that they all wove together into one big tale. And that's really sort of like it. It's really kind of an amazing feat to accomplish. And I know I've mentioned it before on the show. It's just such an amazing thing to read about and to hear about, because these books are so intricate and so well crafted, you sort of feel like Tolkien had to have gone into this knowing ahead of time what he was going to do, and when the truth is, no, he didn't. Like, it was only after he started doing it that he realized, like, he can work this into here, and he can change this so that it becomes a part of this, and he can weave all of these stories together. And that's the mark of a great writer, who can change that midstream. And so yeah, I love the Silmarillion. I would love to see, like, at least this portion of the Quenta Silmarillion, which is from the start of the story of Fëanor to the War of Wrath. I would love to see that made into, like, a TV series or a series of movies. Unfortunately, it'll be a long time before anything like that happens. But I think it would be phenomenal. I think it would be amazing. So I'm already kind of sort of starting to work on my own screenplays of the Silmarillion, just in anticipation of that maybe one day happening, and just for fun. So yeah, that's the Quenta Silmarillion, and next week will be the Rise of Numenor. So thank you all, everybody, for sticking through this incredible journey. We're almost to the end. We've only got 3 episodes left, and then from there, who knows what we'll do next. But again, thank you, and I will see you all next week. Thank you for everybody joining up in the chat. Really lively chat today, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I will see you all next week, and never stop reading.